Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Real Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Edwards. Alongside us today, folks, we've got Dr. Eric Edwards, the CEO and co founder of Phlow and founder and CEO of MedFlow. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Dr. Eric Edwards. How are we doing today, Doc?
It's good to see you, Kevin. So we got Edwards and Edwards going on here, and it almost kind of got this twin vibe, which is interesting because I have an identical twin. So maybe we could have been triplets in another life. But no, it's fantastic to be here with you, Kevin.
I would love that, but I would hate to take away because I'd be the best looking triplet of all three of you, right?
Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt. Yeah, fantastic. But it's awesome being with you here. Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Of course, of course. Well, thank you so much. Three things that we aligned on here today was really to talk about what I just mentioned, which is, obtaining a $900 million contract from the U.S. government. I just want people to just take that in here for a second. $900 million from the U.S. government. Just kind of put that into perspective. 2009, Tesla received a loan from the U.S. Department of Energy for $465 million, and look where they are today. So I just want to again put that into perspective. We'll touch on that base just a little bit more. But of course, the real problem at hand, and really what's happening in the United States with bringing manufacturing and that in pharmaceutical manufacturing back to the United States. And lastly, for any entrepreneur listening to this, any CEO, real leader, just what Eric's experience has been like drinking from the fire hose, I think is probably a good way to put it, Eric, over the past 4 or 5 years. So, Eric, maybe just take us back to 2020. 6 out of 10 Americans are prescribed pharmaceutical drugs. What happened in 2020, and what was your experience?
Yeah, so I'll go back 1 year before that, and in 2019, after leaving my previous startup and going through a successful exit there, I was searching for significance. All entrepreneurs kind of go through that pathway of trying to figure out, you know, what are you made to do? Are you made to be a one and done fire starter, a fire tenderer, to jump in and work for a company, just consult? Um, for me, I had decided that I'm a builder. I like to start fires and like to take risk. And in 2019, I started working with a small handful of trusted colleagues um, to try to see if we could solve for a major problem in the United States of America, and that dealt with pediatric drug shortages. So leading children's hospitals throughout this country every single day are working to resolve drug shortages that are facing our children, having, unfortunately, physicians and healthcare providers having to make tough decisions on who gets certain drugs, whether it's a pediatric hematologist, oncologist who has to make a decision on which kid gets their chemotherapy today. That's happening in America because of drug shortages that have been pervasive and that have persisted for a very, very long time, years and years. So I spent time with Dr. Marshall Summer, my co-founder, Dr. Frank Gupton, to try to figure out how could we solve for drug shortages. And we were focused on pediatric essential medicines. These medicines are critical to sustain life. The pharmacoeconomics are such that pharma companies don't make a lot of profit off these medicines, which is one reason why they go into shortage. Companies just stop making them. So we had a plan prepared to leverage new chemistry and new manufacturing and to partner with pharma companies leveraging these new manufacturing technologies to try to serve them well, to try to serve children's hospitals to come together in a coalition to help them by providing them a sure supply of medicines. And then we had everything lined up, including with Children's National Hospital as our founding hospital partner, and then COVID hit. And in the beginning of the pandemic, we started looking at the medicine list, and this was kind of one of those difficult decisions that you have to make when something presents itself as an opportunity, but you're trying to figure out, do we pivot or not? Well, in this case, we saw there was a major overlap with the adult medicines that are going to be needed that were in shortage for COVID patients. And we decided to quickly pivot our strategy to go not just with a strategy focusing on children's hospitals and pediatric drug shortages and how we can make them here on US soil for them using new technology, but how can we secure the supply chain for these adult medicines for COVID patients, these basic essential medicines that were already in shortage, antibiotics, critical drugs to intubate COVID patients, respiratory medicines, medicines for shock and septic shock. How can we protect that supply chain? And was the government, were they even aware that there was a problem here? And this was early in January 2020. We started to notice that there's going to be an issue here if this pandemic becomes global and gets out of hand. And of course, that's then how we originally got connected to the US government to raise our hand to say, hey, not sure if you're paying attention over here as you're thinking about a vaccine or PPE or diagnostics or ventilators. You need to make sure you have the basic medicines to treat these patients, to make sure they can get on a ventilator, to make sure they can get into the hospital and out of the hospital quickly, having the medicines they need to sustain and conquer, sustain their life and conquer this disease. Unfortunately, we learned they were not prepared, and that's what led to everything falling in place afterwards.
I mean, talk about timing. And just out of curiosity, how big was the end quote startup at this time? How many employees?
Yeah, there were a handful of us, so we're talking less than 10 who had been working. We did have phenomenal strategic partners who had raised their hand and say, hey, we can do this together. We had partnered with the leading nonprofit pharmaceutical company in the United States, Civica. Is their name, Civica, and we had partnered with VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, the Medicines for All Institute. And so our focus all in the beginning was find the right partners, but as a startup, leverage that to work quickly and then prepare to build something substantial, focused on medicines that no one else would focus on to serve populations that no one else would serve.
And so it seems like you noticed something that no one else noticed. I mean, is that fair to say? I mean, did anyone else approach the government during this time to let them know that this might also be a national security risk?
No, not in the beginning. At the time, we were the only ones really focused. First and foremost, I think it's important for your audience here to realize that Phlow, our company, was the first certified B Corporation pharmaceutical manufacturer in the United States of America. So we started off this company with a commitment to impact, with a focus on trying to do something different. And for us, it was all about pharmaceutical sovereignty for the United States. For us, it was about bringing back critical medicines that had not been made here using new technology and advanced manufacturing, but not focusing necessarily just on innovator drugs or making medicines for pharmaceutical companies that are high cost, still significant, but really focusing on medicines that people had left behind and solving for drug shortages, because every single day in America, every single listener to this podcast, if you called 911 today, there would be one or two drugs on an ambulance that shows up in shortage. And we just, during COVID, said, I wonder if the US government understands how pervasive this problem is, or if the right people, I'm sure there are people who know, because at the FDA, there's drug shortage, team members, but do the people who are focusing on the COVID response truly understand that if this thing gets out of hand and these medicines aren't available, or if a country shuts down the exportation of their own medicines that are manufactured, what impact that will have on the United States, being that over 80% of the ingredients, the ingredients that give the drug its action, are made outside of the United States for these medicines. Do they understand this? And what we found out is there wasn't really anyone focused on that. And we just raised the flag of the United States and said, we need to do something about this. Let us help. How can we help?
And so just to clarify on this, Eric, did the government, did they really perceive that as a national security risk? Say, hey, nothing breeds war like scarcity. This is something back in 2020. We don't know what's going to happen. Our soldiers are around the seas. What if production gets cut off to all of our soldiers? It was that the major problem they were trying to solve, or was it really a concerted effort to say we want to bring manufacturing back to the United States for basic, I guess, safer and secure medicines?
I think back then in 2020, the government had started. There had been years of conversations. There had been committee hearings. Conversations were occurring in the Department of Commerce, Trade and Manufacturing, and other departments on offshoring trends over decades that had left our nation exposed to global disruptions. And they understood that global disruptions can occur, whether it's a trade dispute, as we've been seeing, or public health emergency, such as COVID, or price volatilities, um, natural disasters, or war. I just don't think that a broad audience really felt it until COVID catalyzed these conversations in a bigger way. And I think more individuals that had significant influence on making change happen learned about our over reliance for this nation's most critical essential medicine ingredients and the starting materials that feed into them. So I think there were conversations happening, but not to the level. And I think now, today, 5 years later, there's a clear national security risk. There's a clear national public health security risk. Back then, it was, what do we need to do in order to execute a COVID response plan for a very real and urgent public health emergency? And then what role can we play to help there? And in our case, there was an open broad agency announcement. So there was an open advanced manufacturing request for proposal. And we just went in the door through an open contract vehicle request. And we proposed a solution based already on a plan that we had all together, the right teaming partners, the right strategy, going back to those pediatric drugs and shortages. We just expanded it and we accelerated it, and the government supported us to launch this effort.
That's incredible. Just out of curiosity, like how does that figure of 900 million like get sorted out? Like how did you get the valuation for that? And also how did you like pitch it to the government?
Yeah, so I mean, interestingly enough, that 900 million today looks like a good deal. And I'll explain, because back then, we had plans already over a multi-year period of what it would look like to build a lab, build our first GMP manufacturing facilities, scale those facilities, and we knew from our experience in the pharmaceutical industry what the rough order of magnitude was to build these state-of-the-art facilities. Um, we had colleagues, we had consultants, and again, going back to that 2019 planning stage, when we were launching this initial effort, we had to have an idea of how much capital it was going to take. This just accelerated that, and we built a significant amount of infrastructure that today would cost so much more with the changes in the economy, and including some of the impact of the prices of certain things like steel and wood. and
Inflation.
and I will also say there's post-COVID, as many of your listeners who are involved in construction understand, getting equipment and getting things done takes much more time. So, we jumped at it early on, and we've been able to accomplish, what a company today might take 7 to 8 years to do. We've done in 4 to 5 years.
It's really impressive, and the number I want to focus on that you mentioned there was a while back was 80%. 80% of pharmaceuticals manufactured outside of the country that I live in, the United States. What like is there anything people listening to this should know about where their drugs are being manufactured? And just out of curiosity, is it safe to be taking these drugs? Should they be looking into where these drugs are manufactured?
Yeah, so just to be clear, the medicines that we take involve mainly three different components. The first are the starting materials, or the starting chemicals that you need to make this class of drugs that we're talking about, which are small molecule drugs. So we're not talking about vaccines here. We're not talking about biotechnologically derived medicines, so monoclonal antibodies and cell and gene therapy. We're
Hmm.
talking about basic and essential medicines have three main components: starting materials, that then go into what's called the active pharmaceutical ingredient, or API. The active ingredient is what confers the drug's action. So in the case of a brand like Tylenol, the active ingredient is acetaminophen. And then you have the active ingredient go into the dosage form, and a dosage form or finished dosage form might be a vial, a syringe, a tablet, a capsule, a nasal spray. So those are the three components: a starting material, an active ingredient, and the finished dosage form. Now, for these critical essential medicines, the 80% number is 80% of the active ingredients for our nation's most critical essential medicines are coming from India or China. And even in India, many of those active ingredients start with starting materials or intermediate steps occurring in China. So we have this over-reliance, massive over-reliance on China for some of our nation's most significant and critical medicines. And then a lot of times those active ingredients might go to Europe or even the US to be finished in a vial, finished in a tablet or capsule. Some of that is happening in India as well. So what I would say to your listeners is consumers in America really don't understand that when a drug is FDA approved, it does not mean that every drug is inspected. It just means that the manufacturing facility has been inspected. The original application has all the data in it. The FDA approves that. And then the FDA has to conduct many, many inspections over multiple plants, and they space them out. Unfortunately, during COVID, those FDA inspections fell behind. And they need additional resources even today as they're behind by hundreds of inspections. So we really don't know with absolute clarity the quality of the medicines that we take. Nor do we know many times when you go to a CVS, Walgreens, or any other pharmacy, when you're picking up that generic drug, consumers don't normally ask, can you tell me what the country of origin is, where this ingredient was manufactured? And they might be taking something that was made in China. So I think that I encourage all consumers to just understand the supply chain. And I think what you're going to be seeing now that more people understand the vulnerabilities of our supply chain is you're going to be seeing more transparency. You're going to be seeing more policy coming out of the government to say, where's this made? Where's our vulnerability? And how do we bring these medicines, these select group of critical essential medicines, back to the United States? I'm not talking about Claritin, a drug like Claritin, because you can get Zyrtec or Allegra or Xyzal or any number of other antihistamines. We're talking about drugs like epinephrine, the only drug of first choice for anaphylaxis, the only drug of first choice for cardiac arrest. These types of medicines need to be made here.
Sure. Essential medicines. Now, just for the public here listening, right? Most people might be listening to this and go, when the word big pharma pops into their mind, there's this image, right? There's this image of price gouging. There's this image of, the suits, the man at the top who's making it difficult and charging a price because it's inelastic. And I guess you've experienced so far three administrations, I'll call it three administrations with different people each time, who are now enacting EOs, executive orders, who are trying to just make some changes as far as I understand. Now, Big Pharma has the most lobbyists out of any other, I guess lobbyists, I don't know what you call a super PAC or lobbyist firm out there. It's like 3-to-1 they have compared to any other industry. And so changes really have been talked about by politicians, but really nothing has happened. Until a few weeks ago, there was an executive order. Now, I believe, if I have this right, doing my due diligence here, it's voluntary. It needs to be voluntary. But the idea is price equalization. So let's just start here with this executive order, then go to the next one. But the equalization about what this administration is attempting to do is to say, if Ozempic is produced in Japan for $89, another developed country, but it's sold in the United States for $383, it should be equal. It should be the same price. How would that impact Phlow's manufacturing capabilities, and I guess the big pharmas that produce these drugs as you put it overseas?
So a couple of points. The first I'll say is Phlow is a contract development and manufacturing organization. So a CDMO, and that's a pharma service organization that services two different customers. Our mission statement is really simple and it reflects this. Our mission is to help brilliant minds bring medicines to life through advanced development and manufacturing in America. Those brilliant minds that we serve and help as we help to bring these medicines to life include the United States government as we try to fix this broken supply chain of critical essential medicines by making these ingredients in a new way with new technology to be cost competitive on US soil. That's kind of a different pricing challenge, right? Because that's been a race to the bottom on these drugs. No one wants to make them. They're very profitable, but they're critical for national security. And so we serve the government as a customer there. The other customer we serve are pharmaceutical companies who are wishing to have alternatives to Asia, maybe to China, to India, to make their medicines on US soil once again. And to do that, we have to be a technology driven company and leverage innovation approaches and new scientific expertise to help bring new ways of developing medicines, new ways of chemistry, and new technologies in manufacturing forward so that we can be cost competitive on US soil. So we serve them there. Now, as it relates to drug pricing and what we've seen out there to try to level the playing field, my response to that would be there's a lot of complexity when it comes to drug pricing. And there are many players in the healthcare system that play a role in how medicines are priced in the United States of America that are very different than Canada, Europe, or any other country. In America, we have an interesting wholesale distribution network of how we get the medicines to hospitals or patients. We have what people refer to as middlemen, which are pharmacy benefit managers or PBMs or GPOs, group purchasing organizations, that play a role in drug pricing and negotiation. And then we have the manufacturers, and then we have the insurance plans. So you have these agreements that are going back and forth that involve drug pricing with all of these different terminologies like average manufacturing price, wholesale acquisition costs, average wholesale price. And to the patient, sometimes we don't even really know what does a drug really cost. Not dissimilar from when we get our hospital bills and we're trying to figure out, okay, how am I reading these explanation of benefits and what did this bag of saline just cost? Do I understand this correctly? This bag of saline just cost me not $900, but my insurer covered 400 of it. But
Right.
didn't I just see that in a magazine for $12? So I would just say on drug pricing, everything's not what it seems. And part of it's because we created our own mess in America through a very convoluted pharmacoeconomic model. And I think what this administration is trying to do is trying to figure out ways where we can gain more access to patients for high quality medicines and try to get other countries to realize that America spends a lot of money on research and development here at home that then benefits them and allows them to have lower prices. So there's
Mhm.
a lot of fixing to be done. You have to start somewhere. And I think you're going to continue to see different ways that we go about trying to fix this healthcare system and in order to hopefully reach a goal that all of us could share access to high quality medicines made in the United States of America and pricing that is fair based off of the innovation that these companies are bringing forward.
I love it. And talk about impact. I mean, what an impact this can make, if all these go through, including the developments that you're making on the homeland with Flow. Let's just maybe just pause there real quick in terms of impact and how you see, your role in Flow. You've certified as a certified B Corp. Why? You don't really hear that from a lot of CEOs, right? I'm growing it to make an impact. I'm growing it to help these intelligent minds. Where does that come from for you? Why is that important?
I mean, I think from the beginning we felt, Kevin, that our impact should reach far beyond just financial performance. We've felt that our impact should involve a commitment to first and foremost, and most importantly, serving patients, serving our partners, serving our employees, serving the government, and serving our nation. And to that point, It's about going beyond to ensure that medicines are available when needed. It's about leveraging new technologies and advancing, for example, green chemistry to reach sustainability goals. It's about solving for drug shortages. So I did mention after we got this government contract, we went right back to our roots and we built the nation's largest children's hospital coalition alongside these children's hospitals to help solve for drug shortages. This is a coalition of over 30 members representing 42 premier children's hospitals to ensure a reliable, affordable supply of critical essential medicines and to help prevent shortages. And these are drugs that aren't profitable, but they're critical to be available. For us, it's about community engagement. It's about workforce development and supply chain resiliency and security. All of that is impact driven and connects really well with what it means to be a B corporation.
I love that. Well, Eric, we only have a few minutes left, so I do want to kind of introduce this new segment. I'm just going to give you 60 seconds on the board. My question is going to be this. It's going to be, if you were to lose everything today, right? You're going to lose everything today. You've got nothing. You have absolutely nothing with Phlow. What are some of the key things as a leader you would do to get back to where you are right now?
Yeah, wow, what a profound question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is I believe in servant leadership. I believe a lot of leaders also lack empathy, which I think is the cornerstone of transformative leadership. So I think whether you are leading a company or a community initiative, we've got to start stepping in the shoes of others and gaining their perspective. And where I do that well is still even volunteering. I still volunteer as a paramedic. That's how I started my leadership journey. I started as an EMT on an ambulance, and now I have the pleasure of being able to ride on an ambulance with my son. And so I think I would go back to that area of service. And when you do that and you're serving your community and others, you end up coming up with unmet needs. You end up seeing gaps in our healthcare system or problems that can be solved. And you end up gaining confidence that maybe there's something I can do or one small step or a role that I can play to fix this problem. And that really is what started it all, is when you jump onto an ambulance and you just don't have the basic medicines and you're experiencing drug shortages. I just asked the question, why does this have to be an American day? And I think I would go back to my roots and start that leadership journey all over again and say, what problem needs to be solved? And, I'm a faith-based individual, Kevin. Here I am, send me. Tell me what I should be doing.
Well, stepping up to the plate. Another quick pitch for you. So question would be around, this time is going to be around, I think just making an impact in general. If you had to, again, do this all over again, you just got funding, what are the key, business strategic objectives you would do or implement in order to become a very successful company?
Yeah, I mean, if we started all over again, and in retrospect, how would I think through this? At the time, if you think about starting a company during a pandemic and not even knowing how long that pandemic was going to last, at the time, no one knew. Are we going to be in this state of closure for a year, 2 years, 3 years? That is when we started the company, when offices were shutting down. So just imagine that for a second. But if I were to go back and start all over again, I would think through, what do we really need to drive sustainability? And what do we need to have on U.S. soil to really drive unmatched quality and speed, and build out that innovation roadmap right up front, and then cast that vision as big as possible and get additional capital, private capital, to realize that vision even faster.
I love that. Eric, second to last question here for you is just failures, right? We learn so much from them. Now, you're a serial entrepreneur. I would imagine you have a couple that you can probably share with our audience today. Is there one that resonates with you, one that sticks out the most that you've been able to learn and overcome.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to go personal for your audience here versus professional, because so many people have professional examples of failure, and I'm going to just go deep here for a second and say that at my first company, I made work my identity.
Mm.
And so to me, I was failing at recognizing the importance of margin in my life. And I just encourage everyone who's listening here today, you know whether or not you're fully present for your family, for your kids, for your spouse. And there's an opportunity here to make sure that you have that introspection to be able to say, what brings you joy and significance? And I think, and I really failed at that when I started the first company. It was all about, I'll get home earlier if I can just get this next milestone completed, or
Mm.
I need to be on the plane traveling here, 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 and here. And now it's important to just make sure that I don't miss the things that are really going to matter in life the most. I don't want to miss my kids' sporting events or some key milestone, and I don't want to miss a date night with my wife.
I love that because a lot of successful people will even say, it's lonely at the top, right? You have to make those sacrifices. But I'm not really hearing that a lot today. I'm hearing a lot of wisdom from you here today. How do you define success now?
I define success as achieving significance.
Mm.
So Webster's dictionary defines success as achieving wealth, power, and fame. And so I would ask your audience, is that really what we should be seeking?
Hmm.
I I think your audience should be thinking about what does significance mean to them. Success asks how you can add value to yourself. Significance asks how you can add value to others.
Hmm.
Success lasts a lifetime, but significance can last many. So for me, it's about achieving significance.
I love this. So, Eric, last question for you is in all of this, what is your definition of a real leader?
Yeah, so for me, I think a real leader is one who leads with empathy and authenticity. And going back to that servant leadership, it's about putting others in front of yourself. It means empowering others, um, lifting your team up, and allowing them to go further than they ever could have imagined.
I love that. For Eric Edwards, Dr. Eric Edwards, I'm Kevin Edwards, asking you to go out there, have some empathy, stay authentic, empower others, and always keep it real. Doctor, thank you so much.
Thank you.